Hi there, I'm the _twig and I like analysing game rules. Often when players are making characters, there is a tendency to focus on how much damage they can do with little attention put towards their defensive options. When those defensive options are considered, they are typically fairly checklist and surface level. Do I have medium armour and shields? No? Okay then, let's multiclass. There is a lot more that you can think about than just that. I do need to give a quick disclaimer though that I will not be telling you how to optimise your defences in this video. That is not its purpose. There will be no checklist of things to do or grab bag of must-pick features. I'm just going to be giving you the tools to think about your defences, to help you decide whether they are sufficient or if you have holes that you need to fill. It is absolutely possible to have a strong defence with only 14 AC. You don't need that medium armour multiclass if you plan the rest of your build and tactics effectively, and you join my Patreon, where you get early access to videos and a free +1 constitution. It goes up to +8 constitution if you join SK, Mark Rainbow, Barney, Jalali and Precipice. Right, first things first, I need to give some definitions. Throughout this video, I will be talking about hard defences and soft defences. These are kind of made up terms that I use to differentiate between features which directly interact with the damage formula, hard defences, and features which do not directly interact with the damage formula, soft defences. This is easiest to explain with examples. Hard defences are pretty much everything that you actually thought of when you saw this video as about defences. AC, resistances, saving throw bonuses, stuff like that. These hard defence features reduce the damage that you will receive when an enemy decides to target you. Soft defences on the other hand do absolutely nothing when you are targeted, but rather they prevent the enemy from targeting you in the first place. An excellent example of this is the hide action. If you are successful on that check, then the enemy can't target you. It doesn't matter how low your AC is, whilst hidden, you are safe. We'll start with the easier category, hard defences, and even more specifically we'll talk about the subcategory that I call innate hard defences. These consist of your AC, max HP, saving throw bonuses, and any always on resistances from things like your species or a class feature like the Ancient Paladin's Aura of Warding. These are absolutely not rocket science, they are very obvious, but I'll hopefully be giving you a bit more context than high number good. Note that innate hard defense does not include things like rage or the shield spell. Those are the other subcategory, activated hard defenses, which we will be talking about shortly. Innate hard defenses are always on, you don't need to spend any resources for them, whereas activated hard defenses are temporary, typically require some sort of action to turn on, and are normally limited in use. First is your innate AC. Fairly obvious how you get this, the better your armour, the better your innate AC. Grab a shield for +2 or a cloak of protection for +1. The better your AC, the higher the enemy has to roll before they hit you and do any damage at all. What is less obvious, however, is how much protection an additional +1 AC gives you. Often people think that +1 AC means that the enemy has to roll 1 higher on the d20, so that's effectively an additional 5% chance to miss. And whilst this is correct in absolute terms, it's incorrect in the much more important relative terms. To explain this, let's look at the two extremes. We'll say that your AC is so bad that even if the enemy rolls a 1 on their d20, they will still hit. We'll pretend that the nat 1 miss rule doesn't exist and also ignore crits. The enemy has a 100% chance to hit you. If they always did 20 damage on a hit, their expected damage per turn is 20. If you upgrade your AC so now they need a 2 to hit, their chance to hit decreases by 5% to 95%. That is also a relative reduction of 5%, reducing the expected damage from 20 to 19. On the other end of the spectrum, let's say that your AC is so good that the enemy requires a 19 on the die to hit. That gives them a 10% chance, and they expect to do 2 damage. If you increase your AC so they can now only hit if they roll a 20, then their chance to hit drops to 5%. Whilst there's only a 5% reduction in absolute terms, the expected damage drops from 2 to 1. That +1 AC is in effect halving the average damage per round of the enemy. It's a 50% relative reduction. The higher your AC already is, the better each +1 is. If we add back crits and nat 1s, we can actually graph it like this. This shows that if you improve your AC by +1, so that the enemy now needs to roll a 13 instead of a 12, that's a 10% relative reduction in the amount of damage that you will take. Please note that this is not looking at your actual AC. It's looking at the number that the enemy needs to roll. For example, if the enemy had a +5 bonus to attack, then to get that 10% reduction you need to upgrade from 17 to 18. If you're fighting a Cloud Giant with their plus 12 to hit, then you need to upgrade from 24 AC to 25 AC. Fundamentally, what it all boils down to is this. If your party receives a Cloak of Protection, give it to the melee fighter with 21 AC, not the bard with 13. The fighter will receive a much greater relative damage reduction, and since they're on the front line anyway, they're probably getting targeted by more attacks in the first place. That's getting into the bard's soft defenses though, which we'll talk about later. Saving throws work in an incredibly similar way, although because there are no crits and no nat 1s, each +1 is slightly more powerful, assuming it's a save or suck effect. For example, we've just seen that you get a relative 10% reduction when you get an AC increase, which requires the enemy to roll a 13 instead of a 12. The equivalent boost for your saving throws would result in a 12.5% relative reduction. Here's the graph for saves. Please note that the x-axis is now the value that you need to roll to pass the save. If it's a save or half effect though, then the relative reductions to damage go way down. Here's our graph. Forget 10% relative damage reductions, you'd be lucky to get 4%. Even worse, unlike your AC, saving throws aren't just one number, there are 6 of them, and you're very unlikely to have reasonable values in more than 3 stats. Because of this, we need to consider how frequently each saving throw comes up, in order to assess their importance. If you have an extra 2 points in character creation, should you use it to boost your intelligence saving throws or your strength saves? Fortunately, I've already done the maths on this. When the Monster Manual came out, I did a bunch of data analysis on almost every metric you can think of, and as part of that I looked into how frequently each saving throw is called for, and I came up with this. The most frequently used saving throw is Constitution, followed by Dexterity, and then Wisdom. Those 3 being up top would, I hope, be expected. Of the lesser saves, however, Strength is much more common than either Intelligence or Charisma, and almost nothing except Mind Flares calls for Intelligence saves. They're really rare. What this table is not considering, however, is the fact that casters also need to think about Concentration, which is a Constitution saving throw, and that the majority of Dexterity saving throws are pure damage, whereas most Wisdom saving throws either do less or no damage, but have conditions attached. On that subject, I've been talking about this as if it only applies to damage. That's not the case. It also applies to saving throws against conditions as well. Increasing your Wisdom, so now you need to roll a 10 against Hypnotic Pattern instead of an 11, makes you 10% less likely to fail your save and become charmed by it. Damage is just the most easily visualised metric. Anyway, back on subject, saving throws are much more difficult to plan for than AC. The best you can really do is prioritise, for which I'd say that Wisdom and Constitution are the most important ones, followed by Dexterity, Strength, and Charisma in that order, and Intelligence is worth almost nothing unless you know you're fighting Mind Flares. Unfortunately, the only ways to get proficiency in a saving throw are to either start in a specific class at level 1, or take the Resilient feat, with a few exceptions like Monk's Disciplined Survivor. The only other real innate saving throw boosts are from magic items or the Paladin's Aura of Protection, giving everyone nearby likely +2 or better. Aura of Protection is one of, if not the strongest class feature in the entire game, because that innate saving throw boost is so powerful. There are also a couple of species which give advantage to specific saving throws, so let's quickly talk about the power of advantage and disadvantage. You often see people say that advantage is equivalent to a +5, and disadvantage is equivalent to a -5. This is not quite true. Once again, it depends on what you need to roll. Let's bring out the graphs again. If you need to roll exactly an 11 on the face of your die, then yes, advantage and disadvantage are worth + or -5. As you get away from the centre though, the bonus or penalty reduces. If you need to roll, say, a 16, because you've got -1 Wisdom versus an Incubus's Hypnotic Pattern, the bonus from advantage falls to +3.75. Advantage on saves is absolutely good, probably even very good, but it's worth less than you probably think, unless the save modifier is already on par with the DC. Basically, Gnome works best on characters who already have Wisdom proficiency, and it's much less effective if the advantage is the only way that you're trying to protect your Wisdom saves. Getting advantage on saves or disadvantage on attacks as an innate hard defense is incredibly rare though. Outside of some species, danger sense, a couple of magic items, and some features that give advantage against specific conditions, I can't actually think of any. Okay, our next innate hard defense is max HP. Fairly obvious how you increase this: level up in a high hit die class, have high con, get the tough feat, stuff like that. There are a couple of other features that act as pseudo innate max HP increases though, like the Inspiring Leader feat, the Abjurer's Arcane Ward, and the Aid spell. Let's pause on those last two. I described innate hard defenses as being always on, whereas activated hard defenses are temporary and normally require a resource. Both Arcane Ward and Aid require you to spend spell slots though. Shouldn't they be activated hard defenses? Well, they sort of fall in a grey zone. As an Abjurer, you will have your Arcane Ward. Why else would you be playing an Abjurer? Casting Mage Armor or something will be part of your morning routine. It will functionally be always on, even if it does cost a resource. As such, I consider features like this to be an innate hard defense anyway. Maybe it could be a subcategory called a taxed innate hard defense. Anyway, we're not talking about weird edge case justifications for things I've already defined myself though, we're talking about max HP. So that means that I need to give you a weird edge case justification for something I've already defined myself. I said that a hard defense interacts directly with the damage formula. If you take 10 damage, you take 10 damage. It doesn't matter how high your max HP is. Well, remember what we were talking about with AC and saves? We don't really care about the absolute value of damage. We care about the relative values. If you have 10 max HP, that 10 damage just knocked you unconscious. It was 100% of your max HP. If you have 100 max HP though, that 10 damage was only 10%. You can tank another 9 hits. Obviously it's difficult to do this in game, but if you could think of the damage you take as a percentage of your max HP rather than just a flat number, then that will help you work out how strong your defenses are. Many virtual tabletops can help with this actually, because they have damage bars, and on several VTTs you can even set them to change colour when they cross certain thresholds. It's very useful. Our last common innate hard defense is resistance. Not a ton to say here, resistance halves the damage you take to specific damage types. If you're fighting something that does that damage type, you effectively double your HP. What I can talk about though is which resistances are best. Once again, this is from that analysis I did of the monster manual, where I looked at how many monsters dealt damage of each type. We could use this to work out what the best damage resistances are. Obviously bludgeoning, piercing and slashing are highest, with piercing actually being quite substantially higher than the other two. If you're a fiend warlock, put your floating resistance on piercing. But poison, necrotic, fire and psychic are also very good to get as resistances. Something like a green dragonborn ancients paladin will have resistance to basically a third of the monster manual. There's a few other quite specific innate hard defenses. For example, if you have adamantine armor you can't be crit, and if you have evasion you take less from dex save effects. But they're not especially common, and you should hopefully now be able to identify them and consider their value. Let's move on to the other subcategory, activated hard defenses. As I said earlier, these are features that are temporary and normally require actions and resources to use. Because of this, they tend to be much stronger or more flexible than innate hard defenses. For example, the shield spell is a +5 to AC. There are no innate hard defenses which can come close to that, and shield stacks on top of them anyway. Rage gives resistances to the 3 best damage types in the entire game. Even epic boons can't do that as an innate hard defense. And something that everyone has access to, the dodge action, is equivalent to the innate hard defense of a rare magic item which requires attunement. Most activated hard defenses fall under the same groupings that I talked about with the innate equivalents, either giving AC, save boosts, advantage or disadvantage, or resistances. So there's not much else to say about them, but I do want to highlight just how important activated saving throw boosts are. Given how hard innate saving throws are to improve, features like Bless, Indomitable, Fanatical Focus and Mage Slayer are at an absolute premium. Another thing that we can put here is Heroic Inspiration. This allows you to reroll any die, and using it to reroll a saving throw is one of the best uses. The other activated hard defense that I'm going to talk about is something you probably didn't think of: healing. I've defined hard defenses as anything that interacts directly with the damage formula. Healing and temp HP production are effectively negative damage. The ability to cast Cure Wounds is itself a defensive feature. HP is secretly a renewable resource. Your innate hard defense max HP is just a number. You will take damage, you do not get bonus points for never taking damage, and you win fights by having at least 1 HP remaining. Healing people allows them to take even more hits, or even recover from unconscious, effectively bypassing the max HP limit entirely. Having healers in the party is an absolutely vital part of your hard defense repertoire. The last real thing that I want to talk about with activated hard defenses is the concept of the reactive negate. There are several features in the game, such as Shield, Counterspell, Heroic Inspiration or Indomitable, which you can use after something has been declared, and attempt to negate or overturn the result, so that the bad thing never actually happened in the first place. These tend to be the most powerful features, because they are reactive in nature. You don't need to set them up beforehand or predict that something will happen, and they are immediate rather than coming a turn later like the spell magic. Because of this, most of the best activated hard defense suites, especially for saving throws, will be reactive negates. Also worth mentioning here, damage reduction. It's not especially common, but there are a few features like cutting words and deflect attacks which can directly reduce the amount of damage that you take. This is actually the reactive negate equivalent to healing, because it is essentially acting as negative damage. Again, there are a few other features like mirror image which do different things, but what you generally need to know about activated hard defenses is that they should be much more powerful than anything you can get as an innate defense. Healing and saving throw boosts are especially important, and if they can be reactive negates, that's even better. Your activated hard defenses could try and fill gaps in your innate hard defenses, but they are actually at their best when they are boosting something that is already good. Using shield with 20 innate AC is much more likely to work than if you only have 14. Okay, so that was the easy part. Let's get on to the interesting stuff, soft defenses. To remind you, soft defenses do absolutely nothing if you get attacked. They are instead trying to prevent the attacks in the first place. There are 4 broad categories of soft defenses: escape, untargetable, dissuasion, and control. These are all fairly tactical in nature and are honestly based more on your piloting and looking for opportunities to make defensive plays, but if you can build a strong suite of soft defenses, particularly untargetable, then they can potentially mean that you don't need to invest that much in hard defenses. We'll start with the easiest one, escape. I don't think I have a single serious character without an escape feature. They are really important and actually very easy to get if you're looking for them. I want you to hover over the subscribe button and click it if you've experienced a situation like this before. You're on low HP and there's 3 guys around you who will drop you to 0 on their next turn. This is what an escape is for, getting you the hell out of dodge when things go bad. The primary escape option that literally everyone has is the disengage action, and it is absolutely rubbish. Genuinely, I believe that using disengage as an action might be the single worst action in the entire game, which isn't directly harmful to yourself or is called find traps. You will have more luck just dashing away and triggering the opportunity attacks. At least the enemies won't get their multi-attacks off. The problem with using disengage is that if you use it and then run 30 feet, there's absolutely nothing to prevent those 3 guys from running up to you and attacking you anyway. What you really want to do is either move the escape to a bonus action or increase the distance of your escape so that you can get out of range. The most obvious example of this, which actually does both of those things, is Misty Step, as well as all of its clones. If you Misty Step away, you still have your action to spend on whatever else you wanted to do on your turn, and you can still move another 30 feet so that the enemies can't reach you. Other great examples of escapes are the Cloud Goliath's Teleport, that one is actually accessible to basically any build, the Fighter's Tactical Shift, which gives them additional movement with no opportunity attacks, and Cunning Action's bonus action Disengage. That's right, I just said that the Disengage action is the worst thing since unsliced bread. Now I'm saying that Cunning Action makes it good? Yes, because it does one of the 2 things that I required. It moves it to the bonus action. That means that you can disengage and also dash to get out of range or use an activated hard defense like the dodge action. You can get an escape option from your species, from a spell, from a general feat, several classes have them built in, or you could even get Magic Initiate Wizard for Find Familiar as an origin feat and partake in some Dear Battlefield Supremacy. So, I talked about getting out of range multiple times in there. That's one of the ways to use our second soft defense, Untargetable. If an enemy can't reach you, then they can't attack you. This is the reason why flight is so good. At any point, something like an Aasimar can just fly upwards and get out of range of about half of the monster manual, although only about 20% of CR6+. There's a lot more monsters with ranged attacks or flight at higher levels. Even if the archers can still hit you though, typically ranged attacks are a lot weaker, often don't have the debilitating riders of the melee attacks, and sometimes aren't a part of the creature's multi-attack. That's only the first way of becoming untargetable though. There is also obscurement, total cover, and hiding. I have an entire video about obscurement going into much more depth, but to give you the keynotes, when you are heavily obscured by something like a fog cloud spell, you cannot be targeted by anything which requires sight. This is very common for single target saving throw effects like Tash's Hideous Laughter, or even the Mummy Lord's Dreadful Glare. You will know that the Mummy Lord has true sight. but that cannot see through fog cloud, only darkness and illusions. There's many other things which require sight as well, like hypnotic pattern and fear. Our next method of becoming untargetable is total cover. This is something that most characters can't really plan around, but if there's a big wall, standing behind it makes sure that nothing on the other side can attack you. Now, there are a few ways of generating your own total cover, almost all of which use spells. Most obvious and reliable is just making your own walls. Wall of Force or Wall of Stone stop enemies from targeting you, and you can also do very similar things with Stone Shape, which is only level 4. Next up is a very underrated second level spell, Arcane Lock. If you're looking for it, there are a lot of opportunities to use this spell. Whenever there's a fight in a room with a door, you can run out, close the door, use Arcane Lock and designate your entire party as able to open it. From then on, your party just opens and closes the door whenever they want to attack, and until the enemy literally break it down, you're completely safe. It's worth noting that characters only get one free interaction per turn, so if you want to do this open and close trick, you need to make sure that you have at least 2 consecutive turns. If you're a druid, you also have access to a tactic called Druidig. Basically, you use Wild Shape to turn into a giant badger, which has a burrow speed of 10 feet, and just dig down. Burrowing doesn't leave a tunnel, so you have total cover. Finally, the sort of sketchy ask your DM one, illusions. If you use something like Minor Illusion or Silent Image to create a brick wall, functionally, that should be total cover. The guard isn't going to try and run through it or shoot you with their bow. Illusions famously get wildly different treatments from table to table though, so I'd check how they're treated on yours before you start trying to do this. Finally, we have hiding. Now, the stealth rules in 2024 are insane, and I don't know how they're supposed to work, so check with your DM, but I think it's fairly common for rogues to just sort of hide behind a rock and essentially get ignored until they jump out, shoot their bow, and then hide behind the same rock. Now, anyone can attempt to hide with their action, assuming they meet the conditions, but that DC 15 stealth check is actually not that reliable without significant investment. So you probably want to ask yourself if using your action to attempt to hide is worth it. What's significantly better, however, is using your bonus action to attempt to hide. That means either being a second level rogue for cunning action, or being one of my favourite species in the game, the Goblin, also known as the Boggart. These guys can bonus action hide, and there's no limited times per long rest. They can do it every turn. Get something like Skill Expert and you have a really reliable untargetable soft defense. They even get a bonus action disengage too, so your escape is covered as well. Absolutely epic little species. The next soft defense is Dissuasion. This is extremely metagamey, but absolutely exists and so is worth talking about. I am going to give a timestamp for if you want to skip this one though, because it can feel sort of dirty to some people. If you don't want to even think about metagaming, go on to the next one. So, the basic idea here is that you make targeting you less desirable, either because there is an easier target, or because something bad will happen if the enemy tries to attack you. Earlier I talked about getting a Cloak of Protection and giving it to the fighter instead of the bard, and one of the reasons that I gave for that was that the fighter is on the front line so will be attacked more. That there is a soft defense for the bard. The bard is using the fighter as a decoy, drawing attacks away from them by simply standing away from the fight. They are dissuading the enemy from attacking them by saying, hey look, a fighter is standing closer to you and they're hitting you with a big pointy stick. You can also do similar things with summons or pets, like the Beastmaster's Primal Companion, deliberately putting them in bad positions to try and draw attacks away from the rest of the party, or even running past enemies to trigger the opportunity attacks, freeing up an ally who didn't watch this video and build in an escape option. This isn't the only method of dissuasion though. You can also dissuade enemies by making something bad happen to anyone who attacks you. My favourite example of this is Armour of Agathis. Whilst you have Armour of Agathis up, whenever someone attacks you in melee, they take a whole bunch of damage. That means that the enemy is far less likely to do it again, because they don't want to take even more damage. They're going to choose a different target instead. Technically, you don't even need an actual mechanical feature. You could simply yell, first person to attack me gets a fireball to the face. If your DM roleplays in a certain way, that could potentially dissuade attacks. On the subject of fireball, you could also dissuade AoE effects by either spreading out the party so that enemies can only get a couple of you in range, or by getting within enemy lines so that the caster or whoever will have to friendly fire. Finally, there's probably the weirdest form of dissuasion. In the first half of this video, we talked about building up your hard defences. Let's say that your character is wearing plate, has a shield covered in glowing magical runes, and is built like a truck with 16 con. And then standing next to you is just some guy with a banjo. Who is the goblin going to attack in this situation? Bizarrely, having high hard defences is itself a soft defence. This is probably most obvious with the dodge action. I know of multiple DMs, typically DMs who have recently moved over from being players, who just sort of don't target anyone who is dodging because they don't want to roll at disadvantage. Dissuasion is weird and metagamey, and I'm kind of sorry that I even had to bring it up, but it is a very important soft defense. Okay, our last soft defense, control. If you skip Dissuasion, welcome back, I just dissuaded you. I think most of you probably know what control is. It's Tash's Hideous Laughter, Stunning Strike, and Hypnotic Pattern. If the enemy can't use actions, then they can't attempt to attack you. That is literally the definition of a soft defense. Again, incredibly weird to think of Hypnotic Pattern as a defensive spell, but it quite literally is. There is far too much to say about control, and explaining all of it is probably an entire video on its own, but for now, you just need to know that if your enemy can't attack you, then they can't attack you. I will also quickly mention that the best control condition in the entire game is dead. If you can kill your enemies quicker, then they get less turns to try and kill you. So that there is pretty much all of your defences. Your 4 innate hard defences of AC, max HP, save bonuses and resistances, your activated hard defences, of which the most important ones are save bonuses, healing and reactive negates, and your 4 soft defences of escape, untargetable, which can be further broken down into out of range, obscured, total cover and hidden, as well as dissuasion and control. I expect that some of you actually probably knew most of this already, or had at least sort of intuited it. We all kind of know that rogues worry less about armour because they can hide. What I've been trying to do here is simply put it all in one place under the context of defense, so that you can think about everything comprehensively when building your next character. Now for the actual reason why I made this video. It's a Trojan horse. Welcome to my rant about how much I dislike Armour Dips. For those of you who are blissfully unaware, the Armour Dip is the concept of multiclassing one level Artificer to give your wizard armour, or some other equivalent of that. It is extremely prevalent, and when you ask someone online how to improve the defences of your squishy caster, the first response you'll get 9 times out of 10 is the Armour Dip. In fact, the 4th sentence of this video was, "Do I have medium armour and a shield?" The problem with Armour Dips is that they delay everything else that you will ever get. Is your campaign going to level 13? Damn, that Armour Dip means that you don't get to cast Simulacrum or Reverse Gravity. And against the boss of the Thieves Guild at level 5, you didn't have Hypnotic Pattern or Counterspell. Those sure would have been useful, wouldn't they? And the party had to retreat from that young bronze dragon at level 6 because your cleric went down and was about to die. You could have saved that fight if only you had your projected ward. If you don't want that happening and would rather a straight class wizard to get everything a level earlier, I have just given you a bunch of other options that you can use instead. Instead of armour dipping, you can ride a deer to escape and get out of range. You can use arcane lock on doors to get total cover. You can spread out to dissuade the dragon's breath weapon. You can cast Stone Shape to make a solid wall around yourself. You don't need armour. If you think tactically and create a strong suite of soft defences, you can get away without it and be absolutely fine. Hell, if you're really worried, ask your DM for some braces of defense. Alongside a mage armor, that means that you're only 2 AC behind half plate plus shield anyway. Assuming you're casting the shield spell as well, that means that you're going to be taking, what, about 17% more damage? Your soft defenses can make up that difference easily. I have a guideline when it comes to dip multiclasses that whatever I'm dipping for must be build defining or have at least 4 desirable but non-build defining features. Without that, it's generally not worth the leveling delay. That was fun. Hopefully this helped you think more holistically about your defences and consider just how many options there are. Why not share this with your friends so that they can bulk out their defensive suites as well, and make your DM hate me? I talked a few times about my analysis of the Monster Manual, which I highly recommend. This is the first of my 2 videos of the subject, all about monsters' defences. See, it's even on theme. Bye!